Let's practice grammar with sentences from Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I'm going to focus on finding the clauses and leave out most of the modifiers. Ron glared at her as she left. So you have glared and left as verbs, as is the conjunction. Ron is the subject for glared, and she is the subject for left. Neither verb has an object. Harry peered out of the window. So we have peered for the verb. Subject is Harry, he's the one doing the action. There's no object. Out of the window is a prepositional phrase, it's a modifier. It was getting dark. Verb is was, subject is it. Getting is a verbal with dark as the object. Keeping it simple, I will just treat was getting as the verb, and then dark is the object. He could see mountains and forests under a deep purple sky. So could see for a verb. I'm not going to bother splitting them up because it won't actually help us. The thing he could see is mountains and forests. That is a group with and. It's only a phrase conjunction, not a clause conjunction. And then the under a deep purple sky modifies the group and. So I'm going to mention that here. The under applies to the group, not to mountains, not to forests, but to the group itself. The train did seem to be slowing down. We have a giant verb group here. Did seem to be slowing. Down is an adverb. The train is the subject. I'm going to split this up. So we have did as the finite verb. Then seem is its object. To be is the object for that. And then we have slowing. Down is a modifier. It's not the object of slowing, it's an adverb. And then for did, we have train as the subject. And the is the modifier. So there's the full tree. I didn't want to group too many words together and call them all the verb. Maybe just grouping did seem would have made sense. There's flexibility on how you do trees. You want to make them useful. You want to be able to make them fairly quick or detailed, depending on what is useful to you in the situation. Sometimes a sentence is really hard and you want to go into a lot of detail and get everything perfect. But other times you want to go through sentences quickly and get a quick idea of what's going on. Okay, so here we have he and Ron took off their jackets and pulled on their long black robes. So we have a verb took, we've got the and as a conjunction, and then we have pulled as another verb. We've got prepositional phrases, and we have he and Ron for the subject for both verbs. So we have the and grouping the verbs together, took and pulled. And then the subject of the and group is another and group containing he and Ron. You could also read it with implied words. So you could put the subject under took and then put it a second time under pulled. If you say it's implied as he and Ron took off their jackets and he and Ron pulled on their long black robes. I'm going to skip the prepositional phrases again, just focusing on the core words. Ron's were a bit short for him. You could see his sneakers underneath them. This is a comma splice. It's a grammar error. It should be a semicolon, not a comma. So it's really two sentences. There are two clauses here, but there's no conjunction, and there's no punctuation mark that is appropriate for joining clauses, like a semicolon. So I'm just going to pretend it was a semicolon. So we have two things that are being joined by a semicolon. I'll make that the top node. First one uses were as the verb, and Ron as the subject. And we have a complement this time, so it is short. Oh, it is Ron's, not Ron. Ron's were short. There we go. That makes sense. There's an implied word there after Ron's, basically. I think it's the long black robes, not the jackets. So Ron's long black robes are the subject, and they were short. And then there are modifiers like a bit and for him. All right, second part of the sentence, we have could see. Subject is you, and the thing being seen is sneakers. Then modifiers, his, and underneath them, which I'm going to skip. A voice echoed through the train. This is not a complete sentence. There's a colon, and then it kept going. But I decided to treat it as a complete sentence. It's a complete thought. It's a clause. So I just split up the rest onto the next artboard. All right, so verb is echoed. The thing doing the echoing is the voice, and there is no object. Through the train is a prepositional phrase, a modifier. We will be reaching Hogwarts in 5 minutes' time. We is the subject. I'm going to group will be as the verb. Reaching, and then the object of reaching is Hogwarts. In 5 minutes' time is a prepositional phrase, giving additional information about reaching, or one of the verbs. Could be will. It says when we'll reach Hogwarts. When there's a modifier on the verbs, it's often hard to tell which verb it's on because it doesn't really change the meaning. Please leave your luggage on the train. It will be taken to the school separately. This is an imperative. It's a command. So there's an implied subject of you. The thing you're being told to do is leave. That's a verb. And then we have will be taken. There's another verb down there. It is another comma splice, so we need a semicolon. I'm just going to pretend that it was written correctly. So leave, and the subject here is an implied you. The thing you're supposed to leave is luggage. So the luggage will be taken. The subject here is it. Then to the school separately are additional modifiers. Harry's stomach lurched with nerves, and Ron, he saw, looked pale under his freckles. That he saw interjection was a little bit confusing. So if we leave it out, it reads that Harry's stomach lurched and Ron looked pale. And it's also telling us that Harry saw Ron. So we've got the conjunction and. So Harry's stomach is doing the lurching, so that's going to be stomach as the subject. With nerves is a prepositional phrase, there's no object. So then Ron looked pale. Looked is the verb. Under his freckles is a prepositional phrase modifier. I'm going to skip that. Then the he saw does not fit into the primary grammar of the sentence in a clear way. It is set off by commas. I think it is a modifier for looked. It's telling us that Harry saw the looking. Like it's taking this group, Ron looked pale, and it's telling us that Harry saw it. So I'm going to put it as a modifier for the head of the group, which is looked. So we're going to have saw as the action and he as the subject. They crammed their pockets with the last of the sweets and joined the crowd thronging the corridor. So we've got a conjunction and. They crammed. We've got the verb crammed and they is the subject. And then they crammed pockets, which has modifiers. Well, only one modifier there, because with the last of the sweets is modifying crammed. Then we have an implied they joined. Okay, so the verbs are crammed and joined. The Apple Pencil is getting really glitchy, possibly because it's a large document. It's been hard to write. Okay, so who did the cramming? They. I'm going to put they as an implied word for the joined. We could also put it as the subject of the and group. And the thing crammed is pockets. And the thing joined is crowd. Thronging the corridor is a modifier on crowd. The with is a modifier on crammed. Not on pockets, even though it's closer to pockets. It's telling us what they crammed with. The train slowed right down and finally stopped. So we have train doing two things, slowed and stopped. So, and the subject of both of them is train. So it is a child of the and group, or we could do implied words. Write down and finally and the are all modifiers. People pushed their way toward the door and out onto a tiny, dark platform. We have an and group, two clauses again. People pushed, and they pushed away is the object of pushed. Toward the door and there are modifiers. Then I'm going to treat this as having implied words. So we have pushed for the second clause as well. So people pushed again, and this time they're pushing out. And then there's extra details. The reason I did it this way was to not duplicate the their way. But maybe it should be duplicated. Maybe it's they pushed their way toward and they pushed their way out. That probably makes more sense. Let's try it again. So we're going to have pushed as the verb. Subject is people. Object is way. Then we have the and group for two different modifiers. So they pushed their way, and it was both toward and out. Harry shivered in the cold night air. Simple one, so we have shivered. Harry shivered, and the rest is a prepositional phrase. In the cold night air, in is the preposition. Air is the object. The other ones are modifiers on air. Then a lamp came bobbing over the heads of the students, and Harry heard a familiar voice. So two things are happening. We've got another and. The lamp came bobbing, and Harry heard. Did Harry heard because it was really simple. So came bobbing. Verb is came. Lamp is the subject that did it, and bobbing is the object of came. I think maybe it's a modifier. I think it's a gerund, a noun. It's the concept of bobbing. So it's a thing. So it should be the object. Over the heads of the students is a double prepositional phrase. One prepositional phrase with another nested in it. We have over for the first preposition, and then inside it there's of. Oh, Harry heard a voice. Left out the object on what he heard. And that was the last one. So you can see a little bit that there are a bunch of different trees written on. Why practice grammar trees? If you want to be a good thinker, you need to be good at reading and understanding what you read. It also helps with writing, but reading and understanding words is even more important. And also listening to words and understanding them. You need to figure out what they say, or you're not going to be able to critique them or figure out if they're right or wrong. In order to get really good at that, you need to train your subconscious to be good at it. You have to figure out ways of reading and analyzing and evaluating that are effective, and then practice them. You have to start relatively small and work your way up in chunks that your subconscious can handle. As your subconscious improves, you'll be able to have more insight in an automatic, intuitive way. Partly because your subconscious is figuring out more stuff for you, and partly because that frees up conscious attention. Since your subconscious is doing more of the easier parts, your conscious has less to do, and it can be more creative.